These reformers decided that universities were the problem.
And they say that education is a commodity.
They've started a fervent political campaign under this mistaken guise that students are consumers rather than students and future citizens.
You can commoditize it, you can charge for it. It's just another thing out there. It's a barrel of oil, it's an ounce of gold, it's a stock, it's anything.
And that was a clip from Starving the Beast, a new documentary that takes a look at the story behind the reductions in state funding for public universities that have resulted in the transfer of the financial burden from the state to students, not to mention other institutional changes. Here to discuss is filmmaker Steve Mims. Steve, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
I really enjoyed watching your film. I think it took a very complicated issue, made it a bit clearer for a lot of us. This is something that's been going on for years behind the scenes at many public universities. And we can't get into all the forces at work, but let's start with one of the main ones, which is this drive to treat the public university more like a business, more like a corporation. Where did that come from?
Well, the process of defunding these schools has been happening for about 35 years. It's been very gradual. And so that by now, what you hear about is the cost of tuition and student debt. And so there have been big efforts to look at the situation and say, is it time to rethink these institutions? And so there are people who have a market orientation who believe that from the labor contracts on up, these things have to be evaluated and brought into this century.
But if you connect the dots backwards, which was what your film sort of helps the viewer do, yes, it's terrible that student debt has ballooned. It's terrible that tuition has gone up so much. But you see that that is in response to these drastic cuts to the budget from the state.
Right.
And there was sort of no recourse other than to raise tuition in a lot of cases. So yes, you can argue that the schools are charging too much, but where is that coming from? I want to go back to something about the state university, because for so long, for so many states, the state university system is a crown jewel, right? It's lifted up generations of Americans. It's an economic engine for many states. Is that not taken into account by some of these reformers?
I think that they see, again, the historic part of it as having been in the past, that these institutions are absorbing a lot of resources, funding, and that it's time to look at them and make them leaner and also make the costs lower and also have them teach more people. The universities that we focus on are very successful research universities that are competitive in some degree programs with Harvard and Stanford and MIT.
Absolutely.
And so they've achieved that by working very hard over the years to marshal their resources to do that.
And these are research institutions with global reputations. Foreign students from all around the world pay top dollar to come.
It's the big irony about if you have a market orientation for reform, you can look at the public university system, especially at the upper tier research schools, and say like, well, the market already works, because you'll find if you visit many foreign students here, and these are students who've been sent over by their parents. They're paying the highest level of tuition, but they know it's worth it, and they know they can't get it in their own countries.
Right. You looked at you looked at the University of Texas, you looked at University of Louisiana, North Carolina, UVA. How long did it take you to do this? We've
been on this with my partner Bill Benonsky for about 3.5 years. And it's been a process, and it was very organic. We started out covering what was happening in Texas at UT and Texas A&M. And then as we did the research, we heard from other people who said, well, hey, this is happening at our school. Since the film came out, we've heard from people who said, this is happening in Connecticut.
So, and I love how James Carville was such a colorful sort of subject in the film. He discussed with you, we don't see it in the film, that all of his siblings went through LSU, correct?
Right. His parents could never have afforded to send them to Tulane, which is a private school. And they've all been very successful. They built careers based on going to LSU.
Right. Well, so to me, I think some of the argument comes down to the question about what you think a public university should do. Is it supposed to be a technical school that just distinctly prepares students for jobs, for paying jobs?
Right.
Or is it an institution that has a research capacity? Is it an institution that's meant to teach students how to become independent thinkers and citizens of the world? And therein lies the ideological divide, it seems to me.
Yeah, there's a big push for research that it should be something you can monetize quickly. And the research universities have had the luxury of taking years to figure things out. And those basic research discoveries have led to things like the iPhone. It's like a collection of all that stuff is in that phone. And so, and then there's also an idea that maybe these schools are sharing ideas that are frivolous. Courses that are silly and things that are important, when we've had a history of like allowing that to happen.
Now, are you hopeful about after doing this film, are you hopeful about the future of public education, or do you feel, as one of your subjects says in the end, boy, you better hope that your kid gets into one of these private universities and finds a way to pay for it?
Well, we hope that people watch the film and understand there's an issue, and I think most people don't know the story. Most people that we found at the universities aren't really familiar with this. And so the first step in changing things is to be aware that this is actually happening. But no, I'm optimistic. I think that the value is there, the case needs to be made, and I think that the blessing and the curse of a public university is they fall under the dominion of legislatures, but those people are elected.
Yes.
They can know from their constituents how they feel, and I think that's what should happen.
And there are forces that are fighting on both sides. For instance, you showed when UVA's president was ousted, and there was such an outpouring of support for her from faculty and students that she was put back in. So, so there is
and at UT they tried to get rid of Bill Powers for a long time. He hung in there, in part was from the support from his faculty and from the students.
Right.
And so there's people do have more power than they think they do. But they have to know in a deep way what's going on, and that's what we try to put in the movie.
And your film does that so well. Steve Mims, thanks so much for coming to see us.
Thank you.